All right, good morning, church. Good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. It's a little late, but I didn't see you last week, so it's good to see you. Let me pray for us before we start out. God, this is your moments. This is your 45 minutes, so I pray that in this time, help us to see you as more than sufficient. You are good, you are holy, you are righteous, you are lovely, you are perfect. And you offer that to us. You are the gift to receive this morning. So whatever we came in here with, God, whatever distraction, whatever thought that pulls us away from you, I pray that you would take that away, that you would bind that thought so we can focus on you. Help me to see you, God. Give me your words to be able to speak to my own soul and to the souls of us who showed up this morning. You are good, and we look forward to hearing from you. Amen. Go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 17. This is the Ten Commandments. We're talking about the Ten Commandments. We're really just talking about one primarily, but they're all pretty integrated, so it's hard to just talk about one. We've been talking about this over in the 1035 with the middle schoolers and high schoolers for basically since school started. We've been going through the Ten Commandments, and it's been interesting going through these because it's hard to not see the Ten Commandments as a list of do's and don'ts merely. Because it is explicitly that, but it's that for a reason that goes beyond just a checklist of stuff to do. Exodus chapter 20, verse 17 is the final of the Ten Commandments. And it says, "You must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor." It's not merely don't covet. He gives you some real specifics. And it's kind of a weird transition because the list starts off so lofty. I mean, when you got to understand the context, right? So when God uses Moses to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt, they were in slavery for hundreds of years. Then he leads them out through the Red Sea, splits it open, miracle after miracle after miracle. And now they're at the base of Mount Sinai, and Moses goes up and fire engulfs the top of the mountain where Moses is. They couldn't let animals touch the mountain. It was so holy the animals would die if they touched the mountain that Moses was standing on with God. Then he comes down with these tablets of stone. Only 10 commandments are etched into tablets of stone. From "you shall have no other gods before me" to "do not covet." There's 613 commands in your Old Testament, 613 do's and don'ts, but there's only 10 that are the primary culture-shaping design that God gave. And they still apply. And most of these are applicable, like most of these aren't surprising. Don't murder, honor your mom and dad, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Like these are pretty basic ones that they're not revolutionary or unique even to Christianity. But the one that is don't covet. Because it's the only one that says you need to be careful of your thought life. Everything else, 1 through 9, is like explicitly external. So, you don't steal, you don't take the Lord's name in vain, you honor the Sabbath day. These are all things you do or don't do with your hands, with your eyes, with your body. But don't covet, that's all about your thoughts. And if you look at it, we're going to get to this in a little bit, but number 1, don't have any other gods before me. And number 10, don't covet. They're just two sides of the same coin. They bracket the whole 10 commandments. Because it's what Jonathan talked about last week. If you were here, Jonathan last week talked about worshiping God and how he is the only one worthy of worship. If you really are a worshiper of God alone, you're not going to want other stuff. Like, it's okay to want things, and we're going to get that in a little bit, but it's okay to want things, but if that thing that you want is in place of God, then it becomes commandment number 2, an idol. So we have to be careful not to covet, because that's the thought that says, if I just had your stuff, I would be happier. And so I steal your stuff. Don't steal. I would be happier if instead of my wife, I had that guy's wife. So I will take that guy's wife and make her my wife. That is adultery. So you There's your next commandment. See how these work together? The coveting is what initiates that desire to do what we know we shouldn't do. Paul knew this. We're going to be flipping around today, so go over to Romans chapter 7, verse 7, or tapping around if you're on your phone. That works. So Romans chapter 7, verse 7, he's addressing the issue of the law, and how does the law play into our daily lives? And he specifically addresses coveting. Romans chapter 7, verse 7, he says, "What shall we say then? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if I had not been for the law, I would not have known sin. For I would not have known that what it is to covet if the law had said, 'You shall not covet.'" He's like, I didn't even know coveting was a thing until you told me not to covet. Then I realized, wait a minute, I think I'm coveting. We get these rules from God, and you're wondering, like, why does he even give us these rules? For the same reason that if you're a parent, you know how this works. If you're a kid, we've all been the kid on the receiving end of rules, and you wonder, why would my parents be so insane as to give me this rule? Why at bedtime? That doesn't make any sense. If I can stay awake longer, why would I not stay up longer? And your parents give you that rule, as I had this discussion last night after the parade, which was, go to bed now, because I want you to enjoy tomorrow. Like, I'm not giving you these rules to keep you from enjoying life. These are designed to help you enjoy life. There's basic rules, right? I mean, the rules are even the Ten Commandments, you look at them, the rules that God lays down for his kids, it's to not hurt yourself. These are designed to keep you from hurting yourself, to keep you from hurting other people, and to set you up to enjoy life. That's the design. But just like Paul's pointing out, I don't want to be told what to do. So now you tell me I'm coveting. I didn't even know I was coveting until you told me not to covet. Now I'm thinking about all the things I want. And so you didn't even know that you had these desires until somebody told you not to do them. And this happens anytime you get rules. So, for example, if I told you today, just don't touch the giraffe, okay? And you're thinking, maybe some of you saw this when you were trying to read the subtitles earlier on that clip, but anyways, we have a giraffe that's with us today. This is a giraffe that somebody left in the 1035 for us, and we like this giraffe. And this giraffe is supremely soft. And got to get his mane right. He's a little wobbly. It's as stuffed giraffes go. It's sturdy but really soft, and it's really nice. And the only rule I have for you is not to touch it. You can come up here, you can smell it, you can look at it, you can take selfies with it, but you just don't touch it. And in this moment, what rises up within you is a desire to touch a stuffed giraffe that you never had before. Right? You didn't even know that was a thing that you could feel until you were told not to. And this seems crazy, except it exists, except you're feeling it, and you're thinking, why do I feel this? This is what Paul's saying. I'm going to move this back. Distracts me. I get to touch the giraffe. I'm just showing off that I get... Anyways. The desire to do what you didn't know you weren't allowed to until you were told not to, that doesn't stop when you're a little kid. That's all of us always. And we don't like being told what to do. Sin plays itself out in our lives with this thought of, see, I want what I want. And I want it when I want it, how I want it. And if you tell me I shouldn't have it, shame on you. Shame on you for thinking I shouldn't have what I want. Don't tell me I shouldn't have this. I want it. And it feels so righteous, right? Like it feels like such a noble thing to do, to say, you've been told it's from every Disney princess to follow your heart. And then God's like, no, your heart is deceitful above all things, it says in Jeremiah. So like we lie to ourselves to convince us that we want things that we know are destructive. Like not just destructive to culture and other humans, but like to ourselves. And we do these things, and a lot of times the very reason we want to do them is because we were told not to do them by people that we love and trust. It's our sinful nature is so powerful. That's why every day, Jesus says, every day, pick up your cross. Die to yourself. And believe me, teaching about coveting 3 days after Black Friday, 2 days after Black Friday is no coincidence. I guess God knows what he's doing. I thought about this, and then I'm out, I don't know if you got up at 6 a.m. That's not necessarily wrong, but if your desire in that moment was to satisfy a part of your life that only God can fill, there's something wrong with that, because the coveting has turned into idolatry, and that was never the design. The good news is this. If you're in Romans, flip over a few books to Ephesians. The thing I realize as I'm teaching this to kids, to students, is that it's hard to read the Ten Commandments and not read them as a checklist. And I'm a better Christian than you because I got 8 out of 10. You got 6 out of 10. Too bad for you that week. I did better than you on the test, right? This was most of my childhood and self-righteous teenage life. And then I remember reading this verse when I was about sophomore in high school, and I was like, oh man, that's not how it works? Look at Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. Paul says this, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast." He says, yeah, you didn't earn this. You didn't earn your salvation because of how good you did on the test, okay? If you ask somebody, the majority of people on the street, if you say, if you show up to heaven and God's like, why should I let you into my heaven? They'll say, well, I've done more good stuff than bad stuff, right? Like if the scales of life are such that I need 51% good deeds, I think I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm not Hitler, right? That's usually that's literally how it goes more often than you'd think. And so, if that's your standard, you should step up your game a little bit. Anyways, the deal is one sin, it throws the whole scale off, okay? You no longer have a scale that works after one sin, because you commit treason against the king once, it doesn't matter how many good things you've done for the king, because you committed treason against the king, and he can kill you. Sin deserves death. And so if the only reason why we behave ourselves is because I don't want to get smote by God, if your picture of God is lightning bolt holding, just waiting for you to mess up, I dare you to do that again. You said you weren't going to do it, remember yesterday afternoon? Do it, I dare you. And he throws, that's not God. By the way, that's Zeus. That's what Zeus does. That is not the God of the Bible. That's not Jesus. It's hard to want to perform for a checklist. And so this is why Jesus, when he shows up, everything shifts so drastically when Jesus shows up, because he takes a whole different perspective on the thing we've always known to be true. And he shows up and he summarizes, the guy comes up to him and he says, "Teacher, tell us which law is the greatest," planning on tricking Jesus by getting him to say, because as soon as you say one law is greater than the other, now you're saying the others aren't as important and we can get you. It's a good lawyer question. And Jesus doesn't hesitate. He says the first one's this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. I'm going to give you the second one too. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the commandments. So the law, the 603 other laws, and the commandments, those 10, fall under these two things. And now it shifts. Because now you're not... Imagine this. Imagine that you're not trying to perform the 10 commandments as a checklist so God will like you more, but you're doing them out of a response to a God who already loves you. Ephesians 2:8-9 is saying, it was never your behavior that got you here. It was always grace. The grace of God. And so you respond out of love for God and love for people. And when you do hard things out of love, you get joy out of doing it. If all you do is perform the 10 commandments so you can score well on the test, it's either going to lead to I'm a failure as a human, or I'm better than all you guys because I did better on the test. But when you perform out of love, it's always about the other person more than it's about you. So it might be hard being romantic for your wife. It might be hard respecting your husband. But when you genuinely love somebody, that same thing that would otherwise take work if it was a checklist item can be really fun and actually bring you joy. That same action can bring you joy because you're doing it out of love, not out of obligation. Does that make sense? Good. Sure. So, let's talk specifically about coveting. The definition for coveting is to desire wrongfully or without due regard for the rights of others. So, it's not about, wanting things is okay? It's about wanting things too much. John Piper puts it this way: there's no difference in the Hebrew for the word desire and the word covet. Coveting means desiring something too much. And too much is measured by how that desiring, get this, too much is measured by how that desiring compares to desiring God. If desiring leads you away from God rather than closer to God, it is covetousness. It is a sin. Is it wrong to want? No, unless that wanting leads to idolatry and turns you into somebody who's putting their hope and faith in that thing instead of God. Is it wrong that you just didn't sleep on Thursday night because you went out at 4 and you just went all the way until Friday afternoon shopping? Maybe not. But maybe. It depends on where your heart was. Over and over again, the same action can be sin or an act of worship depending on where your heart is while you're doing it. But we live in a world, especially in America, where our whole economic system props up so much on convincing you should be discontent with what you have and you should covet what you don't have. Like, I bet a lot of you didn't even know that you needed a pan that was lined with copper. Like, what if I burned a slice of cheese on my pan? How could I get it off? Gravity. Gravity gets it off. You didn't know that until you saw the commercial. And then you're like, wait a minute. You can bake diamonds into the pan? I saw that commercial there. There's a diamond baked in pan. There's a whole generation that only watches Netflix, so they don't see these commercials. But there's commercials that talk about this. And then you turn it over, and the burnt egg slides right off, and you're left with a good, clean pan. They create this discontentment, and you're like, you should be unsatisfied with your current pan situation because this one's better. And it's hard to argue because like my pan would totally, the egg would just stick, and I would be undone. Get me that number, get me the website, put me in the as seen on TV aisle at Walmart. That's a thing. I was looking up the most popular marketing campaigns currently, and one of them is Coca-Cola, so I brought one for you. You know what Coca-Cola's current motto is? Coca-Cola, open happiness. Convincing, right? Like, I can just open happiness? That's a bold claim, but if it works, fantastic. And I better just try and check and see. So we're going to try. Because I'm doing all right this morning, but I could always be happier. So it's this sound. See if it sounds like happiness. Put it up to the microphone. I know, right? Wow, that was really loud. Hold on. It's lukewarm. But pretty happy. And this is the thing, though, is that it works, like for a little bit. That's kind of the problem, because when you actually do like burn the egg on the pan or you open up a can of Coke, like it's pretty satisfying because the egg falls off. It tastes pretty good. And then, you realize I should stop drinking so much soda because this is not good for me. Because too much leaves you like upset with yourself and unsatisfied. And we do this with all different parts of our life. And so you watch a show of Fixer Upper and you think, I want that house. I didn't even know I was discontent with my house until I saw that house. I don't know what shiplap is, but I want it everywhere that exists. I want it surrounding me. And you think, I want to go on cool vacations like them because I saw that they're on vacation right now, and that looks more fun than my current existence. And I want their kids, or I want their parents, because their kids seem to always behave. That's all they ever put on Instagram anyways, is how good their kids are doing. So they must be good all the time. Why can't I look like her? Why can't I be as smart as him? Why can't I have their job? All these situations that it's so reactionary. Like, we don't even have to try to see what we would rather have. What we have to try to do and really surrender ourselves to is asking God to show us how we can be content with what he's given. How can I choose to be thankful for what I have instead of wishing I had something else? And again, I know this is bad timing or good timing, depending on how you see this time of year, but this is our reality, that when you covet, it only leaves you in two areas. Either you leave bitter because you didn't get it, or unsatisfied because you did. Those are your options. And the only thing that satisfies is Jesus. That's the only way this was meant to go. He created in us a desire for him. Eternity is written on our hearts. And we constantly look, it says in Romans, to worship the creation rather than the creator. And this is a universally human thing, so don't feel like you're alone. That's as soon as we do something ridiculous that worships an idol that we knew we shouldn't have, Satan loves to kick us while we're down and tell you, you're the only one making that mistake. Everybody else scored better on that test. And you're like, no, Ephesians, it was by grace that I've been saved. It was never about my behavior. My behavior comes as a result of being loved. I don't behave to be loved. Those are very different realities. Colossians chapter 3. You're in Ephesians, right? Go over to Colossians, a couple books. Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. In Colossians chapter 3, verse 5, Paul is talking to them about covetousness, and he says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry." Idolatry is putting anything else in your life in the place of God. So removing God and putting something else. And you're thinking, idolatry isn't like where you carve something out of wood and you like bow down to it and you're like, I'm not really doing that. Maybe it's not made of wood, but how about like plastic and microchips where you bow down every day? Just give me a minute. Okay, I'll pay attention to you now. Is it bad to have a phone? Certainly not. You can do some great things on there. But if that's the idol that every time somebody calls you, or every time there's a ding or noise coming out of here, you ignore the person in front of you for the sake of this, that's not healthy. So what is the idol that we put in our place, that we put in the place of God? When we covet, you look in Scripture to where it happens before. When David saw Bathsheba bathing on the roof, he coveted her. He coveted a person. This isn't always things, sometimes it's people. He coveted one of his good friend's wives. And he says, I want her. Go get her for me. And so they get her for him. And he commits adultery with her. Sends her back. She's pregnant. So to cover up the pregnancy, he takes his friend, who is her husband, and has him murdered. This one situation, this one act of coveting has spiraled into 2 of the 10 commandments right here, going down. And he stopped worshiping God. There's no mention of God in the chapter where David sins by committing adultery with Bathsheba. He's no longer worshiping God. He has the idolatry of self. He's murdered. He's coveted. This is how it goes, right? There's a story in Joshua chapter 2. Remember when they took down Jericho in Joshua? As soon as Jericho comes down, one of the rules was don't take anything from Jericho. This is the result of sin, and we're not taking this stuff. And there's a guy named Achan who said, but they have really nice stuff. And so I'll just take their stuff. I'm not going to take all their stuff, just some of their stuff, and I'm going to make it my stuff. And so he covets their stuff, so he steals their stuff. And nobody saw it, but God saw it. And so God uses Joshua to call out Achan, and Achan, him and his whole family die. Why? Because it's not like, God is a good father. He's trying to set you up to enjoy life and to not hurt yourself and to bring him the most glory. And when you bring him the glory, that's the life you were meant to live. It was never supposed to be about you. It was never supposed to be about me. So when we try to establish our life in a way that makes it about us, the whole thing falls apart. Which, by the way, let me just insert here because I feel like I keep on giving bad news. This is why the cross is on our back wall. We never want to lose sight of this. If the cross ever gets out of focus for us, then it's just peril and terror. Because then I'm left to me, and I know I can't save me. I know, I'm the problem, so I can't fix me when I'm the problem. So I need someone to come down The story of Christmas. I need somebody to come down to me, live the life I can't live, and to offer me that life and to take my death. That's the trade of the gospel that's so beautiful. And then to rise from the dead to prove that he's God and say, by the way, you can rise from the dead too. I will give you that life. And then, like a gift, it's not, we read Ephesians, it's not by our works. It's by grace. And so all you have to do is take the gift. And maybe that's why you're here this morning, is to receive the gift. That God is saying, hey, I know you've been trying to work harder at this. I'm not asking you to work harder. I'm asking you to surrender and to say, I actually can't do it. I need help. I need you to do all of this for me. And God's like, now we can work. Now we can work. So come with me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I'll put people around you to help support you when you fall. And that gets to be the church, a community of grace, right? This is the design. So, it comes down to this. It comes down to, you see that sentence on the bottom of your note sheet maybe, or the third point. If I only had blank, then I would be happy. If I only had blank. So what is the blank for you? And maybe this is a big deal. Maybe it's like an ultimate thing that you really, really, really want. Or maybe it's just a series of Coke cans opening happiness and petting a giraffe and hearing something nice from somebody in a text message. They're just little things that get you through the day. If I just had this, I could make it to lunch. If I just had this, I could make it to the end of the workday. If I just had this. And so you want this series of little things to affirm that you're worth it. And you find out that those just don't satisfy. Because it was never meant to. I made this list of all the things that, I say we covet because I know that this is a humanity thing, but I came up with a list, and it's mostly just things that I've thought of that I've coveted over the years. And so if we really have, again, we go back to Commandment 1, worship no other gods, which is the other side of the coin, don't covet. So I was thinking, if we worship God, then we will not covet someone else's lifestyle, their looks, their money, their health, their car, spouse, job, personality, house, vacations, boat, kids, intelligence, hair, voice, talent, prayer life, time, phone, fingernails, Instagram account, bank account, organization skills, their yard, or their talent. And everything else that we've ever thought of that we wish we had instead of what we have. It's all these little things that just pile, and it just corrupts our soul because Satan's so good at convincing us we shouldn't be satisfied with what we have. But if you just had this, it's like the Adam and Eve over and over again. That was his whole basic deal with Adam and Eve, telling them, I know God made everything for you, and his only rule was don't eat from that tree. He's holding out on you. Did God really say, don't eat from that tree? And she's like, oh yeah, he said, don't even touch it, lest you die. Which God had never made the don't touch it rule. I think Adam just told that to Eve, so she would just don't even touch it, all right? Just don't eat from that tree. He's like, you know the reason why he's telling you that. Because if you eat of it, you'll know the difference between good and evil. He is holding out on us. Isn't that what happens every Friday night when you think, I shouldn't do this, but I want to? And everybody else seems to be getting away fine with it. They go 10 for 10 on the commandments every weekend, and they seem to go to work just fine on Monday. So what am I doing on Friday night fretting about whether or not I should do this? I'm just going to do it because they're fine. I could be fine. No. There's a corruption that happens to your soul. And what you find out is Saturday morning always keeps on showing up when you do Friday night. That feeling, and you're like, I didn't do it on Friday night. I guess I'm okay. You know what I mean. Don't look for loopholes. So, I'm saying to myself. So, that Saturday morning feeling that comes after Friday night, that feeling that comes after you know you shouldn't say that thing, but you said it anyways, and it felt so good when you said it because they finally heard what they deserved, but then you felt immediately terribly like, oh man, I was a jerk. I didn't want to do that this Thanksgiving, and there it was. Or you look at that thing and you feel justified because of the way the relationship's been going. I know I shouldn't look at it, but I'm just going to look at it. I'm going to indulge that part of me. And I'll do that thing, I'll be with those people, I'll say that thing, I'll take that to be part of my body, whatever that something is. We get so caught up in thinking, this will finally satisfy me. And what we know to be true is that if we don't get what we want, we end up bitter. If we get what we want, we end up unsatisfied. I'll tell you a story about this. So my son is 10 years old. He turned 10 years old 2 weeks ago. 10 years is a big deal. Like, you remember turning 10 years old, maybe that was a big deal in your family, maybe not. But double digits is kind of a big deal. And for most 10-year-old boys, currently, there's a game called Fortnite that is a big deal. Like, all of the desires of human life kind of funnel down into Fortnite, currently. That'll change, but right now. And if you're wondering, I don't know what that's like 2 weeks, right? That's the old term for Fortnite. That's not what to talk about. That is a game that exists on video game platforms and whatever. It's something 10-year-olds like to do, okay? So I thought, a couple weeks ago, Sarah and I were talking like, okay, how can we not spend a bunch of money on our kid's birthday? And thought, I know what we'll do. I'll call in some favors from some friends, and I'll see if I can borrow their Xboxes and TVs. And so we ended up with our living room with 9 and 10-year-old boys and 4 Xboxes and TVs, a couple of tablets, and they can all play Fortnite together. Now listen, if you've experienced video games with 10-year-olds, that's all they want to do. And if you let them be unto themselves, that's just all they'll do ever. They won't sleep, they won't eat, well, they'll eat, but they won't sleep. And they won't do anything else responsible. They'll just be consumed by the game. And then what would be even cooler is if you get all of them in a room and they could do it together with their friends. So they don't have to be online with friends. They can be online with their friends in the same room. Anyways, so it's a thing, trust me. And so like 9 and 10-year-old boys, that's about capacity for a family. So like we're capping it off here. The problem is there's all these kids in our neighborhood that are used to coming over and hanging out at our house. So we have the birthday party. We have to tell the neighbor kids, like, ooh, that looks awesome. Can we come play? And we're like, no, you can't. Really? Why not? Like, well, it's his birthday party. Like, but he's our friend. Like, I know, but like not friend enough. Or we didn't word it that way. But they are friends. They're just school. And I don't have to defend myself. So his friends, it was amazing because so there's 2 sides of this, right? So Fortnite Wonderland is happening, and I look out the window, and across the street there's 3 of the neighborhood boys who are a little bit younger, who are looking through the window to watch everybody play, and it was kind of sad and funny at the same time, and so. And then the really remarkable thing happened. So for those who didn't get what they thought would be the best part of their life currently, they were really bitter about it, and they were frustrated they didn't get to be a part of it. But then the other side of it started to take place where about 3.5 hours in to this night, and I thought this is just going to last all night, and we'll just let it roll as much as we can until parents would get upset their kids didn't go to bed. So we'll let it roll, and then about 3.5 hours in, kids started, between 3 and 4 hours, they started to drop off and come to ask, like, hey, is there anything else we can do? Like, really? Okay. And so after about 3 or 4 of them came rolling in, there were some of them who were still satisfied. Like, can we do like a Nerf war or something? And so it was, shooting Nerf bullets at each other. And so then our house became just Nerf bullets everywhere, trying to keep our dog from eating them. But it was remarkable how those who got what they wanted, they thought this would be the ultimate. If we could just play Fortnite for as long as we wanted with our buddies, without our parents here. And they got it and then realized this didn't satisfy the way I expected it to. Is there something else we can do? I thought, well, isn't that sounds about right. The way God designed us, it feels like that's going to do it. That will be the everything. Until it's not. So what does the adult version of that look like? What if you got everything you wanted? Whatever your something is, on the if I only had blank, then I'd be happy. What if you got all that stuff? Would you actually be satisfied? I would challenge this. There's a guy that you might know his name. He's a super famous superstar quarterback named Tom Brady. He has achieved about as close to whatever the stereotypical, that's what I want in life, you could accomplish. He has 5 Super Bowl rings. He's literally married to a supermodel. He's, from what I'm told, quite handsome. And he's crazy rich. And he's playing well beyond his years. Like, he shouldn't still be this good at football, but he is. And I'm not even a fan. It's just a remarkable study in, like, what happens if you actually get all of the things you want. And I want you to watch this. So there's an interview done. This is back in, like, 2009, I think, when he had only won 3 Super Bowls. And they were asking him about this. And listen to his response. This is important. Watch this. About 2 minutes long.
Tom Brady, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, is not only one of the NFL's best players, he's one of the NFL's great stories. At the tender age of 30, he has already won 3 Super Bowls, an accomplishment that ranks him with some of the best quarterbacks ever to play the game. And he's having one of the greatest seasons in pro football history. When we first reported on him back in 2005, he seemed underrated and almost overlooked. He doesn't have the arm of Peyton Manning, he doesn't have tattoos, and he doesn't take steroids, and he's never held out for more money. All he knows how to do is win. That's what you always want.
You're right. You're right. It has. And I didn't think it came with all the other baggage, though.
In addition to his success on the field and his sex appeal off it, there is also the $60 million 10-year contract to play with the Patriots.
You know, I'm making more money now than I ever thought I could ever make playing football.
But with all that money, fame, and career accomplishments, we were surprised to hear this from him.
Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey man, this is what it is. I reached my goal, my dream, my life is... Me, I think, God, it's got to be more than this.
What's the answer?
I wish I knew. Wish I knew.
I know, right? Don't you just want to share the gospel with him so bad right at that moment? Like, no, I got it. This is what matters. I can tell you. What do you do with that? That's what happens, by the way. So maybe you might be bitter because you didn't get all the stuff you wanted, but that's the other side of it. What happens when you get all of it and you realize, like, just imagine how frightening that would be to actually have everything you want and then realize it didn't work. Because most of us are going to strive the rest of our lives thinking that, man, if I just had. But if you ended up with all those things, that would be terrifying. There's another quote by Jim Carrey, who's obviously a super famous actor. He says it this way: I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that's not the answer. So they can see it's not the answer. This is where it ends. And so if your thought is, if I just had, again, is it wrong to want? It's not. But if your thought is, then I'll finally be satisfied, that's an idol it's just not going to do the job. It was never designed to. It literally can't work. Because the only thing that was designed to satisfy your soul was Jesus. And he offers that to you. And then he gives you what you need. So what if you shifted? If we don't want to covet, we don't want to spend our lives wishing we had, what is the opposite of that? It's being content, right? So how can we focus on being content? I heard Tony Evans describe it this way. He said, how can you tell if you are content or discontent? He said, do you spend more time complaining or giving thanks? And I don't need you throwing elbows or pointing at anybody at this point, but let's just roll back to last Thursday. A day that's like explicitly designed by our whole country to say, give thanks today. How did you spend more of your actual Thanksgiving day? Complaining or giving thanks? Again, you don't need to say it out loud, but just think about that. Where does that land for you? What if you actually made an intentional effort? You know, the first sermon I gave in 2018 was, I was able to be up here and I was preaching at the end of Philippians, or end of 1 Thessalonians, when he says, give thanks in all circumstances. And that note sheet has been hanging on our cabinet in our kitchen to remind us to give thanks. And I think it's pretty cool that the way God set this up, this will be the last sermon I give in 2018. is to give thanks. So if that's the antidote to coveting, how can we do this intentionally? You'll see this on display. If you have little kids in your house, a month from now, it'll be Christmas. And on Christmas morning, if your kids ask for 10 things, especially if they have siblings, then it's exponentially increased. If your kid asks for 10 things and you go all out and get them 8 things, what are they going to say? Where's the other 2? I asked for 10 things. Like, you have 8 things here in front of you that are awesome. Or, God forbid their sibling gets one of the other 2 things. And then all bets are off. Because why did she get it? Well, it was on her list too. But it's mine. That's mine. Give me that. Like, don't share. I want your thing to be my thing. I don't care how it hurts you. And it just gets really on display. And so if we could turn our minds as us to focusing on giving thanks, that would be huge. So what we're going to do for you, we're going to help you out. So on your way out, you're going to get a sheet of paper that has a turkey and a pilgrim hat. And this says, Thanksgiving Gratitude List 2018. Here is 15 things I'm thankful for. You're thinking, I don't know that I can rattle off 15 things. We're going to help you. It's only 3 things per category. If you have a teenager, middle schooler, or high schooler, they did this at youth group a week and a half ago. And so I told them, I said, this way when you get to Thanksgiving dinner and your family's like, what are you thankful for? You're like, I got 15 things. Here we go. And you can break it out. I hope one of them did it because that would be a cool story. But here's what it is. I want you to be thinking about this. Again, you're going to get this list, talk about it over lunch. Don't throw it away or leave it in your car floor. I really challenge you, think through this. What are you thankful for? You'll find the discontent and the coveting starts to go down when you realize, man, God has really blessed me. So what are you thankful for about your relationship with God? First, what are 3 things about God and me that you're thankful for? I'm thankful for his grace. I'm thankful for his forgiveness. The fact that he created me. There's 3. Pick some more. What are you thankful for about your family? And again, you don't have to go, in fact, I would encourage you not to just go really big and like mushy, but zoom in. Like, what are some specific things that I'm thankful for about my family? About my friends and my job. For the kids, I put my friends and my school. So what are you thankful for about your job? You're like, yeah, my job kind of stinks. Yeah, it might. But there's some things that you're thankful for, like they have air conditioning, right? Maybe. That's a good thing. Be thankful for it. This turns out to be the hardest one. I thought the hardest one would be the last category, but this proved to be one of the more difficult ones. What am I thankful for about myself? We're really good about being critical of ourselves. But what if you looked at yourself and said, I'm actually thankful that God made me like this? And so be specific about how can you be thankful for how God made you. And then the last one, the last 3, what are you thankful for hard times? It's not that you have to be thankful for the hard times specifically, but that's the moment when God does things in you to establish Jesus inside of you. So how can you be thankful for what he's doing in you through those hard times? You do this, there's nothing magical about a list. Write down less, write down more, whatever. The point is, when you start focusing on how good God has been and how much he's blessed you, it's harder for Satan to get in there and convince you should be discontent. Because on a soul level, no copper-lined pan is going to satisfy your soul. There's nothing that you can go out and buy on Cyber Monday tomorrow that's finally going to do it for you. It will, like for a day, maybe. Some of the really good ones last a week or 2. But then it doesn't. So be thankful. Coveting leads to bitterness or dissatisfaction. Jesus leaves you content. And that's why we worship him. So live your life this week thankful as an act of worship. Let me pray. God, your goodness is here. And we worship you with our voices and with our souls. So let our lives be lived as an act of worship to you. We could never deserve this salvation, and yet you give it to us freely. And for that, we thank you. Help us to be thankful. It's your name we pray. Amen. Amen.